Show me Pinocchio. The real Pinocchio. I said the real Pinocchio. Perfection.
Be his son. Fill his days with light. We shall call you Pinocchio.
And today we have an actually good retelling of an old classic, Pinocchio. So yeah, in the society we live in where every other week a new remake, reboot, nostalgia jerk-off bait, pumping them out every other week, most of them don't really cut the mustard, but in a world of all that, we had just another one add to the pile, right? Which is funny, because I'm pretty sure this is, I shit you not, this is the third Pinocchio movie to come out this year. I think. There was that really bad CGI one that people kept joking about. I thought that was this year. Maybe it was last year. We all thankfully buried it under the prison. There was the Disney live action, which don't get me started on Disney and redoing all their OG IPs because they don't have as much creativity in the tank as they used to. Then I saw a little ad pop up somewhere online saying Pinocchio, but Guillermo del Toro's doing it. And as soon as I saw that, immediately I said, thank God. Because I'm at a point in life now where Guillermo, if you don't know who he is, and yes, we are just jumping right into this. So he co-directed this, really was the primary director, but I love Guillermo del Toro's work. He's very good at what he does, very creative. Usually it can be very fantasy, it can be very dark. Usually his films can also be allegories, they can be romances, stories, I think he's fully fleshed out as a director. So yeah, he leans a certain way, but this was coming out, and it was like a PG Netflix film that is big enough where it's also getting a limited theatrical run. So I was like, well, I have to see it. Even if it's somehow disappointing, I still want to see it on the big screen. And boy howdy, we've been on the right horse here, folks. So like I already said, Guillermo is the main director in terms of just, he's the main guy behind this film. Worth mentioning, since this is a stop-motion film, we had Mark Gustafsson. He is shown as the co-director on this. Mostly, if I had to venture a guess here, the artistic and animation director. This guy has a lot of credits, not so much in directing films per se, but more being the lead animator or the director of animation for films such as Fantastic Mr. Fox, and that's stop motion. The cast is a veritable who's who of Hollywood. There's obviously two leads here, but Pinocchio is played by a young Gregory Mann. This kid is almost brand new to the scene. His only acting credits is 2019's Cats musical. However you feel about Cats, I am almost scared to tread into those waters, but he's in that. And then there's another film that he's in. This is only his I think his third film that he's been a part of. The other film has a very long title. I don't recall the name of it. I don't know if it's any good, but in this, he's great. I said there's two leads. There's technically three, because you have David Bradley as Geppetto, and immediately when you see his face, it's going to flood into memory. You're either in the camp of, oh, it's Filch from Harry Potter, or you're in the camp of, oh, it's that bastard from Game of Thrones, or those are what he's most well known for, but obviously he's been in slew of other things. And then we have one of my personal favorites. I've got a lot of favorites, but that's comes to the territory of being a cinephile, I guess. But Ewan McGregor, he's the narrator in that he is Jiminy Cricket. Before I even get into this, I don't want to take up too much time talking about this per se. It's an argument that I've had for so many years, and it's if you think just because a film is animated or stop motion or anything besides live action, whether it's cartoons, whether it's anime, literally, whether it's just animation, if you think any of that is strictly a medium only for children, from me to you, on a somewhat hostile note, go fuck yourself. It's a medium that is just one of many you can use to express the artistic and narrative forms and all that. I don't mean to say you're an idiot or anything. I'm just saying people are so quick to dismiss animation as not taken as seriously as the rest of the films that exist out there, nothing like the classics or whatever. I love to see when a film is able to be animated or use art styles or be just a creative endeavor, and for it to not only entertain, sure, kids, why not, but adults, families, people, just anybody who wants to watch it. And this movie's no exception. I saw an interview where they're talking with Guillermo about it, because normally what he does is admittedly very dark material. And they watched this and loved it and said, so what was your process for approaching this? Like, when you went into this, were you cognizant about not making as dark of a film?
I never think about, like, when the difficulty of this movie was when they said, is it for kids? I said, no, it's not going to be made for kids, but kids can watch it if their parents talk to them. People think about kids and they think about Amblin movies in the 80s and 90s, but a kid now is Greta Thunberg. A kid now is very complex. He's living in a post-ecological disaster, a pandemic, murder, inequality. I mean, it's a completely different reality. So I think the people that cannot take it is the parents. The kids can take it.
All these concepts that Pinocchio himself has to also discover as he's going. The medium of animation is but a conduit for the narrative to be brought to you, and oftentimes animation is able to expand the creative process because you can do so much more with it oftentimes than you can do with live action shit. And this debatedly almost is live action because it's stop motion. Rant over. Pros of the movie. For one, it's beautiful. I think it's some of the best stop motion I've seen in a hot minute. I love watching stop motion films. I love films in general. I also like really good animated films. And I grew up with some classic stop motion, and as I've grown up, I've watched the art form evolve over the years. And it's really cool, and I'm so happy and glad that it's still being utilized effectively, beautifully, and the development of it is being pushed artistically and creatively and practically to this day. The settings, the scenes, the weather, wherever Pinocchio goes in this film, you 100% you're in, you believe it, you're there with him. The character designs are unique and memorable and visually striking, and all the animation of the characters and how they move is great. I love the sound design too, like the attention to detail with the sound design in this movie. I mean, you can tell Guillermo is like, well, that microsecond of cloth doing this should give us a flap sound. Like, he went all in terms of like making sure every box was checked. I don't know how long this film took to make. I know the budget was $35 million. Not a penny was wasted. The cast are all great. No complaints. As for an adaptation, I know the story of Pinocchio, mainly because of Disney's original adaptation of what I believe is an old, I think originally Italian tale. Like, I don't know if it's Italian folklore, urban myth, legend, whatever, but Pinocchio, Geppetto, like all these names are taken from this old Italian tale, which has some solid wisdom to impart. And I was never a huge fan. I mean, Disney's is, it's okay, sure. It's good, especially back then for its time it was good. And since then there have been many adaptations of Pinocchio, but I've never really given a shit, honestly, about the character or the whole. I mean, it's good. Teach kids not to lie, cool. But it wasn't until I watched this where I really kind of cared more about the story and actually was like, oh yeah, this is a pretty good story. I like this adaptation, and it's something I would, if I ever had kids or whatever, or if I had a group of kids to show a movie to, it very well might be this one. The music and the scores, the music is just so, it's fun, it's fitting, it's dynamic, it goes with the whole movie. It's just it's not like a soundtrack that I'm gonna pump on Spotify in the car, but it's one that I definitely think complements the film very well and is noticeable enough where I'm like, man, the music it's just going, it's gas. Someone pass Guillermo the aux. This is my favorite adaptation, I think. I have not seen all the adaptations of Pinocchio. I feel like I'm not missing too much with Tom Hanks just kind of cashing in a check earlier this year. I don't know what the original source material is. I know how the Disney one goes, and this one is similar but takes some liberties as well. I really enjoyed the direction Del Toro went with his adaptation of Pinocchio in terms of talking about religion and war, how it kind of was an allegory and a metaphor, and just telling the story, but telling it in his own way, and it's serious. Like, it's a serious story, but there's lighthearted moments, there's dark moments, there's moments that like are dark but are played for a bit of comic relief. It all works very well. The formula he uses for the film never felt too much one way or the other. It was very enjoyable, and it was solid throughout. It was a good experience. I will say it wasn't perfect. I have a couple minor complaints. This film has, what is it, like two or three musical numbers, and the first one doesn't start until we're kind of like a decent chunk into the movie, and then there's other ones that kind of pop up here and there, but this isn't a musical, but there are some musical numbers. So in a way it did feel like a Disney movie, because sometimes Disney movies will just throw in a musical number or two throughout, but I don't know. My only complaint about this is they weren't bad musical numbers. They were like fun and silly and matched whatever character was singing them, but our skill tree didn't fully spec into the musical version of what this film could have been. So those concepts were kind of undercooked a little bit, and it doesn't hurt the film, but it was enough, just jarring enough where I was like, okay, I cool, this is a song right now, but I would rather have watched just full movie or a musical, but I would have rather just this been a movie without musical numbers. I don't think it needed musical numbers, so it's my only complaint. They're not bad. I think they just don't fully service the narrative the way they should be. Literally the only other complaint I had was David Bradley's delivery. Every now and then it's just a little bit off, and I don't know if it's because I don't want to say, old men speaking into a microphone and trying to imagine that. I don't want to say that, because there's plenty of old actors that do that for a living, and they're phenomenal at it. Bradley was great as Geppetto, but there were just a few times where I was like, that was a weird read on that line, but I was so tempted. I almost gave it a full 5 out of 5, but like I said, even if we forego my minor gripe about Bradley's delivery, I think the one misstep this film takes is trying to incorporate musical numbers into the film when it didn't need it. Sure, when Pinocchio's at the carnival and he's performing, yeah, by all means, that's diegetic to the narrative. That's completely understandable. But otherwise, when it's like, oh, I'm a new boy, what is this? What does it do? Like, give us that scene, but it didn't need to be, I don't know. It fit the whimsical Pinocchio world, but for me personally, I didn't need it to be a musical. So that being said, I'm still very happy that I got to see Pinocchio in theaters. If you can stream it on Netflix right now, I give it a very, very high 4 out of 5. It's a very high 4 out of 5. Near perfection by MovieMan standards. Personal enjoyment, all the way up there. Quality of the film, all the way up there. But that was my review of Pinocchio. Like I said, it is now my favorite adaptation of Pinocchio. I would love to revisit it. I'd love to watch it again. I recommend it. If you get a chance to see it in theaters, do yourself a fun little favor and do it. It's 100% worth your time. At this point, I don't think that Mr. Del Toro can do any wrong. But thank you guys and gals so much for watching. Stay tuned for the next episode of whatever movie I review. And goodbye, travelers.